Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Love Amplified with me, Riyadh. So, I went out this afternoon to go do some shopping, and I bumped into some friends at the shopping center. And we stood for a while in the parking lot, chatting, keeping the requisite social distance and masks on. But what was clear was that all of us were somewhat skittish, were quite fearful of a yellow van pulling up and tossing us all in the back for breaking the law, so to speak. And it was a crazy sensation standing in the parking lot, having a chat, and being nervous about that. And it got me thinking about fear. And what is it that we're really afraid of? What was it that I was afraid of standing there? And obviously there's consequences and repercussions to getting arrested and all of that. But that in itself can be handled. So what is this deep fear that we all have? You know, I don't know how true this is, but they say there are only two real fears that human beings are born with. And that's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Now, if that's the only two inherent fears, and those are kind of there as a survival mechanism, what can all fears be kind of filtered down to? Is there a singular fear that every other fear stems from? Is there a base fear? And if there is, what is that? And ultimately it seems to me like the base fear is fear of our survival, so fear of death ultimately. Now, standing in a parking lot, breaking the law, so to speak, why am I fearful of death in that regard? Well, maybe death isn't imminent, but is a threat. If I do get arrested and get thrown into jail, and for whatever reason things go south from there, my survival ultimately could be threatened in one way or another. Now, is that the ultimate fear? There's a scene, one of my favorite scenes from one of my favorite movies of all time. And the movie is called V for Vendetta. And if you haven't watched it, do yourself a favor, watch the movie. It's now, especially in today's age, more relevant than ever. And there's a scene where one of the protagonists, a woman played by Natalie Portman, her name is Evie in the movie, and she is captured, imprisoned, tortured by the main protagonist, V. And he does it as a way to release her from her fear. And when he eventually lets her go and she realizes that it was him all along and it was not real, so to speak, she's incredibly angry with him. And he kind of explains to her what it was all about, because he would have let her go, he would have released her on numerous occasions, and she'd been imprisoned for a long time, and he would have released her had she just given in to his demand, had she just did what he wanted her to do. And she didn't. And eventually she faces death. In the movie, she actually faces her own death, and she accepts it. She literally surrenders to it. And in that moment, she's liberated. In that moment, there is no longer fear. She becomes fearless. Why? Because she has faced her own death. So I think until we become fully comfortable with our death, with us dying, we cannot fully live. We are always fearful on some level or another that we will die. And we're gonna die. But there's a specter hanging over us all the time. This fear that it's gonna happen. It is gonna happen. And we cannot truly be alive if we always living under the shadow of fear. And in breaking the law, so to speak, today by chatting to people in the car park, it was scary, but it was also liberating, because it's almost like you staring fear in the face and you are winning. And if you want to extrapolate that, you are staring death in the face and you're saying it's okay. Now I know it's a big stretch, but we can do this on a regular basis by stretching ourselves. And we do by stepping out of our comfort zones, because that's scary in many, many ways. Having just written and published my book was an incredibly scary thing. And there was real fear in the beginning. Can I do this? Will people like it? Will it be accepted? But what was the real fear about? Was it death? Was it my survival? And maybe if you kind of dig deep enough, I think that's what it ultimately will come down to. Because people won't like me, and they won't give me work, and they won't threaten, and that's a threat to my survival. And ultimately, I'll land up in the gutter, nobody will support me, and I'll die. I'll have nothing. And does it always come down to that? So I'm not 100% sure yet, but it kind of feels that way to me, that in being able to accept our mortality, our death, in being able to face it on some level or another, we are able to transcend it. And the moment we do, we become free. The moment Evie in the movie is able to recognize that she stood face to face with her death and she was okay, she surrendered to it. She steps out, and she steps out into the rain, and it is a pivotal scene where she looks up at the drops falling down and she says, God is in the rain. And there was this awakening, there was this presence, this total awareness in that moment for her, where everything becomes alive for her, because fear is gone. And I write about this in the book. So people who have near-death experiences, and I've done a lot of reading around that, they often, after nearly dying, come back and they're totally changed, because on some level or another they recognize that they can't really die. Yes, the body can, but there's life beyond this. There's existence beyond this in some different form. And maybe that is about coming to terms with this thing called death, where it's just a stepping stone to something else. So I think to be truly alive, to be truly present in this life, and to become somewhat fearless in this life, you have to, on some level or another, embrace, accept, acknowledge death. And I know too many people out there are terrified of it. Where do you stand in all of this? Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Ciao.